Let me start recording also. We have 2 more minutes, so I'll talk for 2 minutes. How are you guys doing? How's the momentum? You guys need a lot of projects. I think a lot of people told me you were binging too much, not writing a lot of projects. So hopefully next week onward should be projects. Practice, yeah. We need a place where people write a lot of code and practice. Well, you don't know. Next week maybe you have something where you can post a lot of videos. Some is an offline video. Yeah, it probably just makes sense for all of these educational videos to be offline or whatever recorded. And then live videos to just build a project and doubts solving wherever it happens. Practice, go in some more depth. Sure, more than happy to use ref for loops. Someone else also did this. They were showing me in the office only. Let's see what you've done. It did work for him also. I found. Yeah, he also used GPT. Yeah, he also did the exact same thing. This probably you did after GPT told you something else. But yeah, I was seeing this. Someone else also showing me the same thing. They're like, you could call useref inside a for loop, even though you shouldn't call useref inside or any hook inside a for loop. Yeah, he did the same thing. Are you the same person we met? I met in the office. But yeah, he did something similar. Only thing was, he did this also, but GPT suggested something else, which was an arrow function here that calls useref, which makes sense that you can do that. You can do an ref salary.push, an arrow function which creates the useref, and you call the arrow function over here. That way you're not initializing or calling the ref or the useref inside a for loop, but calling a hook inside a loop just feels weird. And something you probably shouldn't do. May or may not cause inconsistencies on your front end. But at least for his use case, and I'm assuming yours as well, it just works. In which case it is fine. But not recommended to run loop hooks inside a loop, be it a use state or a use effect or anything else. All right. With that, I think we're at time. Happy to discuss this more at the end. Today's TypeScript, for the people who have done just backend for now, that's Node.js and MongoDB, you'll be fine through most of the class. For the people who have done React also, Endmate will help you a little bit. Mostly this is going to be a lot of backend coding. Understanding what is TypeScript, why do you need TypeScript, why should you use TypeScript always? In your projects, you should not write JavaScript code. I also have to force myself to write JavaScript code. You might have seen yesterday, I initialized a TypeScript project by default. Then I remembered, we haven't yet covered TypeScript. I moved to JavaScript. So something you should commonly do in any TypeScript project, in any JavaScript project, in any MERN stack project, in any React project. What should you do? You should use TypeScript. Why? We'll understand today without any further ado. Let's get right into it. I am recording locally. Everything looks perfect. Oh, cool. Let's kick things off with the two types of languages. Until now, we have dealt with JavaScript, but some of you might have dealt with C++. Some of you might have dealt with Rust, Golang, Python. These can be divided into a bunch of categories, if I'm being honest. There is compiled versus runtime languages or interpreted languages. That is one category you can push them to. Today we'll understand something else. Today we'll understand loosely versus strictly typed languages. What are we understanding? Strongly typed languages and loosely typed languages. The name is giving it away. A strongly typed language is a language like Java, C, C++, Rust. Traditionally, you might have heard, okay, these are harder languages. Rust mat karo, abhi pehle JavaScript kar lo, Python kar lo. First do JavaScript, Python, then go on to Java, C++, Rust. So why do people suggest it? One of the reasons is that Python, JavaScript are loosely typed languages compared to Golang, Rust, C++, which are strongly typed languages. These make your life a little bit harder when you are coding, but lead to less runtime errors. What is the runtime error? We will get to. But if you are application bana rahe ho, if you are building an application, if it's a short-term gig, it's an MVP, build it here. You'll be fast initially yahan pe. But as your project becomes much bigger, your team will be much faster here because of them being strongly typed languages. But also some of these are compiled languages. Compilation comes with its own set of benefits, which is why people suggest that JavaScript is fine, but you should learn Golang also because Golang is strongly typed. It is a compiled language compared to the languages over here. What are the benefits of a strongly typed language? It has lesser runtime errors. Harkirat, what is runtime? As I said, languages can be divided into two parts. Ek to strongly and loosely typed. Some languages that are compiled and some languages that are not compiled, let's say. Sometimes they are called interpreted languages. Sometimes they're called a just inline interpreted language. But the big difference between both of these is if you are using a compiled language, for example, let's say you're writing C++ code, you write your code in a .cpp file. You run some command to convert this high level file, this a.cpp, into a binary. Something like this. For the people who do code forces, you might run this command from time to time. I totally forgot what it was, but I think it looks something like this. This is the command to take an input CPP file and output a binary out of it, a file with zeros and ones out of it. Why do you do this? Because this compilation step can catch a lot of errors during compile time. What is this doing? This is compiling my high level C++ code. What do I mean by high level code? Human readable code. Hashtag include bits/stdio.h. int main. Something like this. This is high level code that humans understand, that you write over here. It gets compiled into a binary, let's say zeros and ones, that the computer understands. This process is called compiling. And why is it good? Because बहुत सारे errors the compiler can check during compile time. If you are doing something weird, let's say converting an integer into a string, compiler will catch it. The Rust compiler is even more aggressive. If you might have heard of fighting the borrow checker in Rust. It's a very common term. Okay? You are always fighting the borrow checker in Rust. What does that mean? कि इसका जो compiler है, the Rust compiler checks for 10 different things. कि यार आप यहाँ पे कुछ गलत तो नहीं कर रहे हो. It will look at your code. It will not run your code. It will look at your code and try to understand कि कुछ गलती तो नहीं कहीं. And if there is a fault, it will not compile. It will give you an error. It will stop compiling. It will not spit out an a.out file. If it spits out an a.out file, or in case of Rust, if it spits out a binary, in case of Golang, it spits out a binary, तो बहुत errors वहीं catch हुए. You were able to solve a lot of errors during compile times. You compiled it, there was an error that the compiler threw. You fixed your code. कि अच्छा, I had written something like, int x equal to 1. And then I tried to assign x to a string or do something very random. Whenever you do some type errors like these, कि भाई आप number को integer को number में convert कर रहे हो, or you are doing something else that the compiler thinks is incorrect, the compiler will not spit out the file. If it spits out the file, बहुत सारे errors यहाँ catch हो गए, and then you actually run the file. There are two steps here. You compile a CPP file and then you run the CPP file. The errors that come over here are called compile time errors. The errors that come over here, you might have an infinite for loop. You might be calling a function again and again and filling up the memory. You might be defining a variable, an array whose length is 10 raised to the power 20. Then that things the compiler cannot check. अब compiler आपका code run तो नहीं कर रहा है. Compiler does not run your code. ऊपर से there are rules written over here. It checks क्या does your code follow that rule. But if there is some error while you are running the code, that will lead to a runtime error. So that is why these languages are more safe. Why do people say Rust is memory safe? चलो उसका तो कुछ और reason है. But generally these languages are more safer to write your code in. अगर आपकी बहुत बड़ी application है, तो it is good कि there is a compilation step here that is checking some things. And बाकी के errors जो चलो आए सो आए. That is the developer writing bad code. The problem in JavaScript like languages or Python like languages or PHP like languages is there is no compile time step. आपने अपना high level code लिखा, let x equal to 1. You did something wrong, something right, it doesn't matter. The point is, it doesn't really have a separate compilation step. कि यार, I am going to look at this file and figure out is something wrong. And then you actually run the code. It doesn't have two steps. In a single step, it is compiling your high level code, running it, compiling your high level code, running it. So all errors are runtime errors. In case of these languages, any error that comes is a runtime error. In case of these languages, compile time errors come in the first step, runtime errors come in the second step. Why is this one better? Because it lets you move fast. है कंपाइल टाइम एरर है, आई एम द डेवलपर, आई हैव रिटन द कोड, ट्रस्ट मी, कुछ फटा तो रन टाइम पे फट जाएगा। रन टाइम पे फटने का मतलब है व्हेन योर यूजर इज यूजिंग योर एप्लीकेशन, इफ दे आर ऑन योर वेबसाइट यूजिंग योर बैकएंड विल क्रैश। वर्सेस थैंकफुली हियर इफ योर यूजर, a lot of errors will be caught over here। अगर कंपाइल टाइम ही फेल हो गया, you have nothing to deploy on the internet, आप अपना बैकएंड डिप्लॉय ही नहीं कर पाओगे। Since you were not able to deploy your backend with bad code, you were able to fix the bad code and then finally deploy the good code. That is why you might want to use this. These are harder to write, these are easier to write. That is the difference between a compiled and a non-compiled language. This is something else. This is strongly typed versus loosely typed. इनमें क्या फर्क होता है? This is a strongly typed language. Int number equal to 10. Number equal to text. If you think about it from first principles, there is no reason for you to store some text in a variable called number. You might say that मेरा तो use case है. You might have a use case, then it is fine. But generally, it feels like something wrong is happening here. You have defined something as an integer. अगली लाइन में आप उसको text में convert कर रहे हो. And then you're returning 0. This code will fail in C++. During which step? During the compilation step itself. अगर देखा जाए तो there is nothing wrong here. But the C++ compiler says C++ is strongly typed. If you try to do something like this, I am going to throw a compile time error. That is what happens over here. And what happens over here? अगर आप JavaScript में same code लिख दो, does it run? It runs. Why? JavaScript is a loosely typed language. Change the variables type to whatever you want at runtime. JavaScript does not care. Both of them come with their own benefits and downsides. We are going to learn how can you convert JavaScript into something which has strict type checking. We want to convert a loosely typed language into a strongly typed language. We want to introduce variable declarations like these. We don't want let number equal to 10. We want to assign it a type like integer. What if there was a language that looks very similar to JavaScript, yet gives you type safety? That is what TypeScript is. People realized that JavaScript is a powerful language, but lacks types. TypeScript was introduced as a new language to add types on top of JavaScript. So that is what TypeScript is. Let's go to the next slide and look at the better definition. What is TypeScript? TypeScript is a programming language developed and maintained by Microsoft. It is a strict syntactical superset of JavaScript, adds optional static typing to the language. अगर ये सब कोड आप JavaScript में लिख सकते हो, you can write it in TypeScript as well. If there is some code you can write in JavaScript, if let is a thing, where is a thing, function is a thing, class is a thing, you can write it in TypeScript also. TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript, which means if you take your random JavaScript file and convert it into a TypeScript file, that is valid code. Now you might add a lot of strict rules that makes the code not compile, but generally any JavaScript code you've written is valid TypeScript code. Any TypeScript code you've written may not be valid JavaScript. यहाँ पे you write 10 different things. So let's understand what are these 10 different things you can add. What is this extra syntax you can introduce to your code if you are using TypeScript compared to JavaScript? One small step or one small thing to know before we proceed is that TypeScript code जो आप लिखने वाले हो बहुत जल्द, when you are going to create .ts files and not .js files, they never run. Just like this code never runs somewhere. It gets converted to zeros and ones, which is what runs. Similarly, if you write TypeScript code, you first compile it to JavaScript, and that is what runs in the browser. That is what runs in Node.js. Have the slides been added? Slides have been added. So ये TypeScript never executes somewhere. It is not a language that is meant to execute. उसमें कभी line by line आप जाओगे ही नहीं. The TypeScript compiler, something that the folks at Microsoft wrote, takes code of one language, TypeScript, converts it into another language, JavaScript, as long as the rules of the compiler are followed. Same as G++. ये क्या कर रहा था? Taking some code, inspecting it, checking it, is it following all the rules of C++? Is there type safety everywhere? If that is the case, it was working. If that is not the case, then it was not compiling to a.out. Same thing happens over here. You are expected to write some slightly more strict code, slightly more type safe code. If there is any error over there, your code will not compile down to JavaScript. Your code will remain as such. If everything is fine, your code gets converted to JavaScript, which is what goes to the browser, which is what runs in the final Node.js process. This is one of the reasons people hate TypeScript, or some people hate TypeScript. कि there is an extra step. जो चीज़ मुझे start करने में used to take 1 milliseconds, node index.js. Now I have to first convert it to JavaScript. Then I have to run the JavaScript. It becomes really slow. It is even slower in a language like Rust. अगर आपने सुना हो कि sometimes Rust programs take over a minute to compile. उसमें इतने सारे checks हो रहे हैं. The borrow checker, ownership checks, all of these are happening at such a big scale. इतनी ज़्यादा checking हो रही है कि it sometimes takes a minute to do all of those checks for a program and finally get the binary. TypeScript में इतना नहीं होता. It does not have ownership rules. Very simple compiler, but still there is an extra step, which is why अगर आप अपना code जल्दी change कर रहे हो, it is not as easy as restarting the JavaScript file. You first have to reconvert the TypeScript file into JavaScript file, then run it, which is why some people hate TypeScript. Is it good? It is good. Is it used everywhere? It is used everywhere. Or, in any big code base, you will see TypeScript. So no point running away from it. It is something we have to learn. Thankfully, it's not too difficult to learn. So we'll learn it today. JavaScript is the runtime language. TypeScript is something that compiles down to JavaScript. When TypeScript is compiled down to JavaScript, you get type checking similar to C++. If there's an error, the conversion will fail. If there's no error, it will get converted, which is what runs. What is the TypeScript compiler? Just like the G++ compiler, this compiler takes C++ code, spits out a binary. This compiler takes TypeScript code, spits out a JavaScript. It isn't the only one. In fact, if you've seen my latest video on GatherTown on YouTube, I was getting some issues with the TypeScript compiler with monorepos. So I used ESBuild. So there are many compilers. SWC is another one. I think this is created by the folks who created Vite. So there are many TypeScript to JavaScript compilers. You can use any one of them. Today we will use TSC. Let's move on to the next slide. Let's understand what is the TSC compiler. Let's start a project locally. Let's write some TypeScript code and go from there. You can write it on Replit. I do not urge you to write it at Replit. I would urge you to run the project locally. Although you can go to repl.it, start a new TypeScript project and do all the same things over there. You can skip this step also. You don't need this step. Let's not do this step. If you want, feel free to globally install TypeScript on your machines. Even if you don't do it, you will be fine. Preferably don't do it only. Let's create our very first TypeScript project. Okay? Let's do it locally together. And for the people who are facing issues locally in JavaScript, you can go to Replit. Although I would assume abhi tak to sab kuch sorted hi hai. You can write JavaScript code locally. Let's kick things off by creating a fresh project. I'm going to call it week 14 TS. Let me open it in Visual Studio Code. It's an empty project that I'm opening in Visual Studio Code. All right. What is step 1 of initializing a Node.js project? It is npm init-y. We have done it many times. It is npm init-y to initialize an empty Node.js project. What does this command actually do? It creates a package.json file. Itna to hame aata hai. This one step we have done many times. There is a second step if you want to use TypeScript. You have to create another file here called tsconfig.json. You can create it yourself, or you can run the following command to create tsconfig.json locally. npx, that's the npm executable, tsc, that's the TypeScript compiler, --init. It is failing for me because I did not install TypeScript globally. A lot of you didn't. So firstly, install TypeScript locally. npm install TypeScript. Make sure you see TypeScript over here. Ideally, it should be a dev dependency, but this is fine as well. Ideally, it should be a dev dependency because you don't really need TypeScript on runtime, but npm install TypeScript is also fine for now. Now run npx tsc -- init and you will see an empty tsconfig.json has been created for me. It's a JSON file. What does it contain? My TypeScript config. You can tell the TypeScript compiler a bunch of things. कि यार ऐसे compile करियो, इसको ignore करियो, इसको ignore मत करियो. You can keep the strictness according to you. All the comments that you see over here, for example, ts build info file, disabled reference project load, target ES 2016. All of these options, module common.js, module resolution node 10, base directory, root directories, all of these are configuration variables. Very hard to read them because most of them are commented. कि अगर use करना है तो कर लेना. By default, they have some values. Most of the times, you don't have to deal with all of them. Sometimes you will face a random error where you have to touch this file and then, figure out what went wrong. Most of the times, some of these config variables you have to change. Even I don't know all of them. There are infinite number of, configurations you can give. The important ones we will talk about, and then we'll start moving to our project. Maybe before that, ignore the tsconfig for a second and create a quick TypeScript file locally. How do you create a TypeScript file locally? Index.ts. I have created a TypeScript file, not a JavaScript file. Can I write TypeScript code over here? Yes. Can I write JavaScript code over here? I can. TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript. So let's write some TypeScript code. Let x equal to 1. Console.logx. Pretty simple JavaScript code. Let's add some TypeScript syntax to it. What did we say? We said that TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript. ये code तो हम लिख ही सकते हैं. We can write some extra code as well. So let's introduce the very first type for today, which is me telling the TypeScript compiler कि यार this is a number. Let x:number equal to 1. इसके बिना भी चल रहा था, but इसके साथ भी चल जाएगा. This line of code is similar to me doing int x equal to 1 in C++. This is how you define types in C++. This is how you define types in TypeScript. Colon space the type. You don't need the space. ये भी चल जाएगा. But just, better, cleaner lint to have a space over here. Let x:number equal to 1 is the very first TypeScript code we have written. Harkirat, what is the benefit of TypeScript? इसके बिना भी तो चल रहा था. This was also working. It was working because of something called type inferencing. TypeScript ने infer कर लिया कि यार अच्छा ये 1 है तो ये number ही होगा. You can explicitly give it a type, or the TypeScript compiler in this case inferred its type to be 1. कभी कभी it is not able to infer a complex type. तब you have to give it an explicit type over here. But अभी के लिए चलो, we will write this code. Let x:number equal to 1 log x. Can I compile this code? Yes. Can I directly run this code? No. I cannot directly run TypeScript code. Harkirat, TS node does it. TS node also converts TypeScript to JavaScript. That is what finally runs. So step 1 needs to be converting the TypeScript file into a JavaScript file. As I said, there are many compilers. We will use TSC today, but we can discuss ESBuild, SWC, many other compilers that exist to convert TypeScript to JavaScript. If you want to convert it using the TypeScript compiler, run npx space tsc space -p. That's TypeScript compiler build. What will happen when I build it? Can you see an index.js file over here, right next to the index.ts file? Look at the code. Can you see any TypeScript code over here? Can you see यहाँ पे I wrote in the TypeScript file, I wrote let x:number equal to 1. In the JavaScript file that went away, because this is standard JavaScript syntax. Now if I run node index.js, it just works. We are good to go. So what does this tell you? Here, I could have written JavaScript code directly, but it is better to write in TypeScript. Harkirat, why is it better? Same hi to hai. It is better because if by mistake I do this x equal to Harkirat, I try to convert a number into a string, the compiler is stopping me. Harkirat, मुझे तो करना ही है convert. My x variable can be a number also, a string also. That's a separate thing. Then you have to give it a type of number or string. But अगर आपको convert नहीं करना था, this is an actual error. C++ will also complain on the same thing, right? Now TypeScript also complains all the same thing. You can see a red squiggly over here. If I hover over it, it clearly tells me type string is not assignable to type number. What is it telling me? कि इसका type तो number है. You can't give it a type string. That is what the TypeScript compiler is complaining about. That is why I use TypeScript. मोटा मोटा यही है. As your project becomes very big, it is good to have checks like these so that अगर कोई developer गलती कर रहा है, then the TypeScript compiler can catch it rather than it going to users and then users catch it. Let me delete the JavaScript file. Let me delete the JavaScript file locally. Now again I have the TypeScript file which has some errors. Now if I run tsc-b or npx tsc-b, sorry about that, oh oopsie daisy, npx tsc-b, do you see that even though the JavaScript file has been created, you can also stop this as well. There is some parameter you can change over here, I forgot which one, to prevent the JavaScript file from being created if there is a compile time error. But even more than that, can you see that the TypeScript compiler is complaining? It is telling you कि भाई कुछ तो error आया है. Do not deploy this application even though I have created the JavaScript file for you. And you can prevent that also कि नहीं, अगर if there is even one error, do not create the JavaScript file. But what is the TypeScript compiler telling you here? कि यार type string is not assignable to number. Same thing that I was seeing over here. That way the developers know कि हाँ भाई compilation failed. I need to fix this, however and then proceed. I need to either remove this line of code, या तो ये line ही गलत है, या फिर अगर the developer is like ये line सही है, then it has to change the type from number to number or string, let's say. क्या number भी हो सकता है, string भी हो सकता है. So that is what the TypeScript compiler provides you. Let's go back to the slides. We created an empty TS file. We compiled the TypeScript file to JavaScript. We saw that the type checking went away, or the TypeScript code went away over here. Notice how there is no TypeScript code in the JavaScript file. JavaScript file में कोई भी TypeScript code नहीं है. And then we tried to compile the code again, and we saw there is an error. String is not assignable to type number. This is the high-level benefit of TypeScript. It lets you catch type errors at compile time. Helps you skip a step. अगर आपने कुछ गंदा कोड लिखा है, वो रन टाइम पे नहीं, कंपाइल टाइम पे ही पकड़ा चला जाएगा. Do we understand this? 30 minutes have passed. Let's do a quick poll. TS-config file is coming eventually, so don't worry. Let's do a poll, Akash. Pretty good, simple stuff. So let's move on. जल्दी से basic types discuss कर लेते हैं, थोड़ा कोड लिख लेते हैं. Please write a function that greets a user given their first name. आपको function लिखना है that takes first name as an argument, prints it on the screen with a hello in front of it. कि hello first name. ये कोड कैसे लिखोगे? Take 1 minute to write it in JavaScript. Try to write it in TypeScript as well. Also try to not look at the solution. The function doesn't return anything yet. Simple assignment है. Hello world program है. Should take you 1 minute. Take a minute and try to figure it out. Even if you write it in JavaScript, it's fine. But try to think कि कैसे ये कोड को मैं TypeScript में convert कर सकता हूँ. I'll look at Q&A for a while, for like 40 more seconds. Okay, some people already wrote it. TSC-B is not working. If it isn't, run npx tsc-b. If you have installed TypeScript globally, then you can do tsc-b. If you haven't, then you'll have to do npx tsc-b. So npm installed initial TypeScript is necessary. If you don't have TypeScript installed globally, then yes. If you haven't installed globally, then no. Sorry, this is fast. Someone said, okay, let me recap the steps. You can do this. You can globally install TypeScript. What does that mean? कि आपके मशीन में ही प्रेजेंट है, अब हर प्रोजेक्ट में यूज कर लो धड़ाधड़. और अगर आपको एक ही प्रोजेक्ट में यूज करना है, इफ यू ओनली वांट टू यूज इट इन वन प्रोजेक्ट, देन डोंट इंस्टॉल इट ग्लोबली, इंस्टॉल इट जस्ट इन दैट प्रोजेक्ट. एंड एक बार ये इंस्टॉल हो गया, उसके बाद यू कैन रन npx tsc-b to compile your TypeScript code into JavaScript code. Cool. Let's see if you were able to write the function. The very simple assignment. अगर local setup नहीं हुआ है, go to replit, start a new TypeScript REPL. Go to repl.it. Just log in here, create a new REPL and select TypeScript, not JavaScript. Select TypeScript as the language. The question was, write a function called greet that takes the user's first name as an input and greets the user. Console.log hello space first name. Question was this much. Given a function greet takes first name as an input, log hello space first name on the screen. Notice you see red squigglies over here. What does it say? Here parameter first name implicitly has an any type. Here, what is an any type? What is implicitly over here? Implicitly का मतलब होता है कि यार आपने इसको कोई टाइप खुद से तो नहीं दी है. You have not written something like this कि first name is going to be a string. Just how I wrote let x colon number equal to 1, I have not written कि first name is going to be a string. इसकी type should be a string. मैंने ये नहीं लिखा है and hence the compiler is complaining. How do you fix this? One, you can tell the compiler कि भाई मैं तो लिखूंगा random code. अगर मैंने कुछ argument नहीं दिया है, think of it as any. There is a special type in TypeScript. We saw number until now. थोड़ा थोड़ा I showed you string until now. There is one more type in TypeScript called any. Let x colon any equal to 1. As the name suggests, any can be anything. X equal to true, x equal to हरकीरत, x equal to random. कहीं पे भी एरर नहीं आ रहा है. नो एरर एनीवेयर. व्हाई? बिकॉज x इज नॉट अ नंबर एनी मोर. x इज एनी. तो देयर इज अ स्पेशल टाइप इन टाइपस्क्रिप्ट कॉल्ड एनी. एनी का मतलब होता है कुछ भी हो सकता है. एंड अगर आप इसको कोई टाइप नहीं दे रहे हो, if you are not giving this argument any type, आप कह रहे हो first name can be anything, that is fine. But the TypeScript compiler is saying कि यार implicitly any मत करो. आप तो कह रहे हो कि any ही है, भूल जाओ. अगर any है, make it any explicitly. What is the TypeScript compiler telling me? TypeScript compiler is thinking कि आप शायद देना भूल गए हो. You have forgotten to give the type, which is why it is saying here it has an implicitly any type. If you want for it to be any, make it explicitly any. तो मैं कंप्लेन नहीं करूंगा. तो you can either give it an explicit any type. In our case, we want to give it a string type. कि यार input to this argument would be string. And what are we doing over here? Logging it on the screen. Let's try to call greet now. अभी तक तो function has been defined. Function has not been called yet. So let me call the function with a string like Harkirat. Notice no compilation errors. Let me call the function with a number like 1. Notice there is a compilation error over here. Argument of type number 1 is not assignable to parameter of type string. ये number is not assignable to a string. आप यहाँ पे number नहीं दे सकते हो. The greet function expects a string over here. That is why the compiler is complaining over here. How can I fix it? Harkirat, make it any. That is one thing you can do. You can make it any. कुछ भी हो जाएगा. But then you are not using the type safety of TypeScript. You should avoid any's at any cost. You should avoid any's at all costs. You should never use any. Even though it is provided, you should avoid using it. You should use string, number, explicit types. अगर आपको दोनों ही देने हैं, then you should write string or number. We will come to this syntax later also. But you should write string or number अगर ये दोनों support करना चाहते ही हो. If you want to support both of these, pass both string and a number. Give it an explicit type string or number over here. But if you are writing any, थोड़ा benefit चला जाता है. Ideally, what did the question expect? String. So we're going to write this. This was what was expected from the first problem over here. The first problem was write a greet function which takes a string as an input, prints it on the screen. The second question is slightly more complicated. Write a function that calculates the sum of two functions. कर सकते हो 1 second में, 30 seconds and finish it quickly. What does it say? Define a function called sum. Takes two numbers as input, a comma b. Returns their sum. Doesn't log it, returns it. तो ये function define कर दिया, but what is the problem? Implicit any. Give it an explicit type. Now try to call it. Let answer equal to sum 1, 2. console.log answer. थोड़ा सा fast लिख दिया मैंने. Hopefully not. But what did I do? Define a function called sum. Try to write it yourself. Takes two arguments, but both the arguments have been given an explicit type over here. Number, and the sum returns a plus b. Notice TypeScript can't check your logical errors. अगर आपने माइनस रिटर्न कर दिया, ये टाइपस्क्रिप्ट को नहीं पता. फॉर दिस यू राइट टेस्ट्स इन योर जावास्क्रिप्ट कोड. Cannot get logical errors. It can get type errors for sure. That is what we're getting over here. Function sum takes two arguments, returns the sum. Log it on the screen. If you run it, txt-b to compile it, node index.js to run it. It prints 3 on the screen as expected. That is the second function we had to write. Quickly try to write it. And let me go through the third problem by then. Return it based on. ये भी simple है. This third problem is also very simple. It says, oh, fourth one is difficult. Third one is, write a function called isLegal. It takes a age as an input, which is a number, and returns a boolean either true or false based on whether or not the user is above 18 years. Hopefully that is very simple to write. Function isLegal, takes age as an input, returns true or false. The one thing that is happening over here in this function and this function is that we are implicitly getting the return type. कुछ और बोला मैंने यहाँ पे. But first try to do both of these, then I will answer what I said. We are implicitly getting the return type. The return type is being inferred by the TypeScript compiler. The return type is being inferred by the TypeScript compiler. We will see that very soon and what I mean by that. Until then, quickly write this code. $20 more seconds, then we'll proceed. I'll look at Q&A for 20 seconds. Both of them try to write. Second one is also very simple. गया क्यों नहीं आएगा? The stream is lagging. Oh. OTP box of video will be. Is there a way to skip compilation? Oh, it is lagging. I can try changing my Wi-Fi. Let me try changing my Wi-Fi and join back. Hopefully that is better. Code not running. Easily looks good. Easily looks good. All right. You guys are good to go? Cool. Alrighty. Moving on. One thing I was saying was कि भाई, if you remember C++, we write code like this over there. Int main. What is int over here? Or you write int sum a. Oh god, I forgot how to write int a comma int b, something like this. That's how you write code in C++. What is this first int? It is the return type of the function. कि ये function जो है एक integer ही return करेगा. Whenever I write let answer equal to sum, यहाँ पे भी I can write this कि यार आंसर की वैल्यू नंबर होगी, और this type can be inferred or gotten. Inference पे बाद में आते हैं. The type of this can actually be fetched from the return type of this function. Just like I can write int sum a comma int b in C++. I can write function sum. A is a number, b is a number, and the return type of this function is also a number. What am I saying? ये return भी एक number कर रहा है. Why is that good? Because now I know, अगर मैं hover करूँ answer पे, the TypeScript compiler is telling me, hey, answer is a number. I did not have to explicitly tell it this. खुद ही उसे पता है कि answer is a number. I can log answer over here. If I try to change answer to something else, the TypeScript compiler will start to complain कि यार ये तो इसमें तो number stored है. But I did not have to explicitly write it. It came from the return value of the sum function. इसने return किया, इसने खुद ब खुद पता कर लिया कि number है. But notice, even if I don't write this, तब भी इसको पता है कि the return type is a number. Even still it knows that the return type is a number. Why? Because the return type is being inferred. कि यार अगर दो number add होंगे तो number ही तो निकलेगा. The TypeScript compiler, without running this code, is smart enough to know कि यार if number is an input and number is another input, you are adding two numbers over here, it is going to be a number only. That is how it already knows. ये आपको देने की जरूरत ही नहीं पड़ी. It automatically inferred the return type of the sum function. If I make one of them string, let's say, what would be the, oh sorry, not this. Yeah. Let's say I make both of them string. Then what do you think is the return type now? अगर आप दो strings को add करते हो, तो what comes out? Another string. And hence, if you notice, the return type here is a string. What happens if I make one of them a number and one of them a string? I say first argument is a string, second is a number. What would the type of answer be now? What happens in JavaScript if you add a number to a string? It becomes a string only. The final thing is a string, for example, 1, 2 over here. So what does that tell you? कि the TypeScript compiler is smart enough to know इसकी वैल्यू string ही होगी क्योंकि आप एक string और एक number को add कर रहे हो. This is what is called type inferencing. It is able to infer the return type of sum. आपको explicitly देना है, आप explicitly भी दे सकते हो. This is the full definition of the sum function. You can also give it a partial definition. You don't have to sort of, whatever. You don't have to give the return type. It can be inferred. You can give the return type also. You can also put it over here. So a lot of this can be inferred. उसको already पता है कि return type number है. You don't have to give it. उसको already पता है return type number है. You don't have to give it. If you want, you can. Cool है. That is how you write very simple functions in TypeScript. The fourth assignment is a little hard. The type basically is a little hard to look at. But what does it say? It says create a function that takes another function as an input and returns it after 1 second or runs it after 1 second. Sorry. ये तो is a good question generally to know, and hopefully you guys already can do this by yourself now. कि write a function that takes another function as an input and runs that function after 1 second. So write a function, delayed call. It takes a function as an input and calls the function not right now, after 1 second. What is set timeout? It runs a function that you pass it in after some duration. And that is exactly what we have done. कि जो function आ रहा है, let's say delayed call function console.log. Hello, थोड़ा fast हो गया. I will explain it. But delayed call is a function which takes another function as an input. इस फंक्शन के अंदर आप एक फंक्शन पास कर सकते हो. JavaScript lets you or TypeScript lets you give function arguments. Question is, what is the type of this function argument? Should I give it an any type? That might work, but what is the problem there? The problem is you lose the benefits of TypeScript. So the way to write a function in TypeScript is, this is the function, the signature of the function. कि यार ये है function के arguments. जो function है कुछ argument expect नहीं करता. This is what the function returns, which in this case it is nothing. What does void mean? Nothing. So whenever you want to give a function as an input to another function, the type of the argument is what? As you can see, arguments, arrow function, void. मतलब कि यार ये जो function है इसमें कोई arguments नहीं है and ये कुछ return भी नहीं करता. If it did return a number, you should give an int over here. Even though the compiler won't complain, number. The compiler doesn't complain. We saw this in cohort 2 also, and then there was a way to fix it. अगर मैं यहाँ पे कुछ ना भी return करूँ, or it does complain, there you go. What does it say? Argument of type empty colon void is not assignable to parameter of type empty colon number. वो आपको बता रहा है कि whatever function you are writing over here does not return a value. I repeat, ये जो function है ये नंबर रिटर्न नहीं कर रहा. जो एक्सपेक्टेड फंक्शन है यहां पे दैट शुड रिटर्न अ नंबर, विच इज व्हाई दिस यू कैन सी अ टाइपस्क्रिप्ट एरर ओवर हियर. दिस वन इज अ लिटिल बिट हार्ड, आई टोटली अंडरस्टैंड, तो आई एम हैप्पी टू गो थ्रू इट वन मोर टाइम. वी हैड टू डिफाइन अ फंक्शन कॉल्ड delayed call. It takes another function as input. I can call it whatever. I can call it f. I can call it another function. Whatever I call it. इसकी टाइप क्या होगी was the question at hand. And the type is going to be कि इसके arguments, let's say, are nothing. If it was something, you would write something like this. कि इसके arguments are a, which is a number, and b, which is a number. But our function does not have any arguments. So empty arguments returns nothing, returns void. This is going to be the type of the input. And let me define a function separately now. Let log equal to a function, or whatever, you can also write this function log console.log. Hi there. Something like this. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to say call the log function after 1 second, or so whatever. That will already happen over here. Function body, as you can tell, will call another function after 1 second. So this is how we've written our code. Hopefully that is easy to understand. If not, tell me, we'll do a poll. Do you guys understand this? अगर मैं यहाँ पे int कर दे रहा हूँ, it will fail. Do you guys understand that? Why? Do you understand functional arguments? ये नहीं समझ आया. That is fine. I hope इससे पहले तो सब समझ आ गया होगा. ठीक है, we'll take it slow, no rush. Let's answer doubts for 5 minutes. Then we will restart at 8:56. Let me look at Q&A. Is it like promises? It has nothing to do with promises. Very laggy. Ooh. Why is void used? void का मतलब क्या होता है? Have you not seen void main, whatever, void function name in C++? C++ also has this type called void. Void का मतलब क्या होता है? खाली, nothing. So in C++ you can write a void log function. इसका मतलब क्या है कि ये function is going to return nothing. इस function के end में कोई भी return statement नहीं होगी. That is what void is. Same thing is happening over here. कि ये जो भी function मैं expect कर रहा हूँ, it has 0 arguments and returns nothing. अगर आप ये function देखो, it has 0 arguments, it returns nothing. अगर मैं कहूँ I need a function which has 0 arguments and returns a number, तो मुझे यहाँ पे number return करना पड़ेगा. If I don't return a number over here, the TypeScript compiler will complain. Sorry, number. If I don't return a number over here, the TypeScript compiler is complaining over here. Can you see the red squiggly over here? But if I do return a number over here, everything is good. So that is what this return type over here is. Void is like void in C++. Or no, I think C++ has a type called void. This is that. It is not like a null. A null is something different. Can we override the function type in TypeScript? Oh, do you mean polymorphism? Do you mean something like this? Can I have another function called delayed call, which has different arguments? Is that what you mean? There is a way to do it. It's mildly complicated. I totally forgot this. I've done it once when you have a lot of incoming messages in through WebSockets. Then your WebSocket handler can have, the message type to be a bunch of types. And the return type also depends on the input type. Agar input type, ek bande ne move message bheja, the return type is similar. So you have to add some sort of polymorphism there. I'm assuming that is what you're asking. There is a way to do it. I totally forgot what it is. It's like, you have to add a bunch of these types one after the other, and then finally it catches it. I'm happy to discuss it. Iske baad, when we're done with the class, or if you figure it out, tell me how can you do polymorphism in TypeScript. There is a way to do it. Very weird way to do it, but do it. What if we have to delay different types of functions with different return types? Would I need to create separate functions for both? Yes. So you can do this. Okay, you don't have to create different functions. You can do this. We are coming to this. We're coming to this OR operator. Here it can either be this, or it can be this, or it can be something else. So you can add this OR operator if there are multiple types, or we are coming to something else very soon, interfaces and type. वो भी आप use कर सकते हो. You don't have to create separate functions. You can just do this. It can either be this, or it can be this, or it can be something else. This becomes problematic. अगर आपको ये करना है कि it can be this, but then the return type is number. It can be this, then the return type of function is a string. तब वो थोड़ा complicate हो जाता है. If it is just कि arguments can be 10 different things, you can add out over here. You don't have to have separate implementations. Very good lag, sir. All right. Fast.com. Am I connected to I am not. Ankur is here to help me out. Seems like there's a lot of lag. I'll change my Wi-Fi. Lag?
Wi-Fi is good. Just the screen is lagging. Probably close some apps.
Okay, got it. Cool. CPU. Will do. I don't have too many apps open. Mobile on?
Mobile.
चाहिए? मेरे उसके बिना खुलेगा नहीं वैसे. You won't be able to read the message without my face. Just come back and take it. Yeah. Like keep it open.
Only VS Code is lagging.
All right.
Camera is lagging.
Cool. So the camera is not lagging. VS Code is lagging. Let me close everything I have open, even though I don't have too many things open. Seems like it's time for an M4. What do you guys say? No, I don't think so. I think it should be fine. Yeah, I'll figure it out before the next class. That's all I can say. Sorry for the lag, guys. Cool. Hopefully this is clear now. And let me look at Q&A for another 2 minutes. Then I'll move on. How can we call greet function inside the delayed function? Oh, if this is the function greet, which takes a name as an input, which is a string, and does a console.log hello space name. This is the greet function. What is the type of a greet function? It takes a name as an input, which is a string. So what is the type of the function over here? KR, it takes a name as an input, or you can name it whatever you want. A as an input, which is a string, and returns nothing. So the type of the input function changes. I now have a function called greet that I need to pass in, and this function doesn't have empty arguments. It has more than one argument over here. So I have to explicitly define that argument here. What if the delay, what function type we give in C++ if you don't want to return something from the function? I think it is void, right? I mean, I could be wrong, but I think it is void. Void, greet, string, or whatever, std string, or like, correct me if this is wrong, name, and then, whatever, cout name. That's how you do it, right? Or something similar. If a function doesn't return anything, I think the return type is void in C++, but correct me if that's wrong. It's like giving some knowledge about how my function is like to TypeScript. That is exactly what TypeScript is. Giving a lot of knowledge to the compiler. कि यार ये function को ये return करना चाहिए. Now this function will be called in 100 places. If ever it is called with the wrong types, please break the compilation. That is what TypeScript is. You are making the TypeScript compiler very knowledgeable about your code base, giving it a lot of types, so that if this function is ever called incorrectly, your TypeScript compiler will complain. All right, good to go, guys. Shall we proceed? And we will proceed, but I will wrap it up at 9:30. Oh, are we good to go? All right, we do understand it. I think OTP is here, and OTP is 605278. कि अमाउंट इतनी ज़्यादा क्यों है? Some guys getting in M4. All right, moving on. The tsconfig file. We can sprint through this. As I said, tsconfig.json can be very complicated. You can have a very complicated tsconfig.json. Right now it has, compiler options, which has composite, target, lib, JSX, types. बहुत सारे चीजें आप इसे दे सकते हो. Most of them are commented. So if I remove all the comments, you will see by default हम बहुत ज़्यादा देते नहीं है. This file looks very intimidating, but if you really look at it, it's not that intimidating. Like this is, some small configs like these that are given by default. अब इसके बाद आपको जितनी ऐड करनी है आप कर सकते हो. I've mentioned some important ones that are good to know in the slides. The first one is going to be target. Do you guys understand the ES, what is it called? ECMAScript standard. Not just true for JavaScript, for most languages. Oh, poll ही कर दिया. Either way is fine. If you don't need a poll for this, but basically, there's this organization called ECMA ही है शायद नाम कुछ और. I think this is the same as whatever the W3 organization. There is a company that decides कि JavaScript ऐसी दिखनी चाहिए. अब we today do where a equal to 1, sorry whatever, let a equal to x equal to 1 और const x equal to 1. ये तो अब आया है. पहले तो people used to do where a equal to 1, variable a equal to x equal to 1. These two were never a thing. These were introduced later. We today write arrow functions. Let sum equal to arrow function, something like this, a comma b. But this has been introduced recently. पहले तो you had to write it like this, a comma b. So whenever you are राइटिंग सम फ्रेश सिंटेक्स नाउ, ये जरूरी नहीं है कि अभी इंट्रोड्यूस हुआ. इट माइट हैव बीन इंट्रोड्यूस्ड in 2020 2021. It hasn't been there since forever. JavaScript language keeps on getting better and better. The organization that does it is called ECMA. I don't know the full form, but there's something called ECMAScript, which is a standard, and everyone who is implementing the JavaScript compiler needs to follow this standard. थोड़ा ज़्यादा complicated हो गया. Basically, long story short, बहुत सारे versions आते रहते हैं JavaScript के. 2016 version, 2019 version, 2020 version, ES 2020, ECMAScript 2021, ECMAScript 2022. It means कि अगर आप ES 2022 कोड लिख रहे हो, वो इंटरनेट एक्सप्लोरर में नहीं चलेगा. इंटरनेट एक्सप्लोरर ओनली अंडरस्टैंड्स जावास्क्रिप्ट फ्रॉम 2016. उसके बाद जावास्क्रिप्ट गॉट बेटर एंड बेटर, दैट इट डज नॉट अंडरस्टैंड. द इंटरनेट एक्सप्लोरर वॉज नेवर अपडेटेड टू अंडरस्टैंड एरो फंक्शंस. तो उसमें रन करोगे तो चलेंगे भी नहीं. इट वॉज नेवर अपडेटेड फॉर एग्जाम्पल टू अंडरस्टैंड लेट एक्स इक्वल टू 1. इट ओनली अंडरस्टैंड्स वेयर एक्स इक्वल टू 1. तो you can write JavaScript code in various ways. You can use let, you can use where. ये यहाँ भी चलेगा, यहाँ भी चलेगा. This will work everywhere. This will only work in, let's say, 2020 and onwards, क्योंकि उसके बाद के compilers ही उसको समझते हैं. Now it's the browser's responsibility. If this is Chrome, which uses, whatever, the V8 engine, or if this is Firefox, which uses whatever, Spider Monkey, or whatever their JavaScript compiler or is, ये इनकी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है कि अगर ECMAScript has introduced something new, they quickly add it over here so that developers ये वाला कोड रन कर पाए. I repeat, whenever a language is there, more specifically for JavaScript, new and new standards keep on coming. These guys expose a standard कि now all JavaScript compilers should support let statements or arrow functions. Then the engineers at Google update the V8 engine to interpret let. The engineers at Firefox update the whatever the engine is, I think it's called Spider Monkey, to update, the compiler को ये समझ आना चाहिए ये statement. It should be able to interpret this statement. The folks at Internet Explorer, since it is an old and depreciated browser, इनको कुछ नहीं समझ आता. They are not able to do it, as in they are not able to, they have not upgraded to this 2021. इनको ये वाला कोड इंटरप्रेट नहीं कर पाएंगे बिकॉज देयर एन ओल्ड कंपाइलर, वहां कोई काम ही नहीं कर रहा. नो वन इज वर्किंग ओवर देयर. तो दीज आर द स्टैंडर्ड्स दैट कीप ऑन कमिंग. व्हेन यू राइट टारगेट, यू आर टेलिंग कि विच ECMAScript टारगेट वर्जन द टाइपस्क्रिप्ट कंपाइलर विल कंपाइल टू. कि आपने टाइपस्क्रिप्ट कोड तो लिख दिया, शुड आई कन्वर्ट इट टू 2016 JavaScript so that it runs on all the browsers? You might have users which are very old, users which don't have Google Chrome, they have Internet Explorer. So for them, you should convert your TypeScript code into ES 2016. You might have all new users. For them, you should convert it to ES 2022. Backward compatible है. If you've converted your TypeScript code into 2016, वो सब जगह चलेगा. If you have converted it to 2020, then it will only work on some devices, not work on other devices. If you look at the target over here by default, it is ES 2016. It makes sense. क्योंकि a lot of people use browsers that have not been updated since 2016. But if you want a more modern syntax, you can update it to whatever, ES 2020, ES 2022. Let's say we upgrade it to ES 2020. If this is the function that I have written in TypeScript, slightly complicated function, uses the arrow syntax, the newly introduced syntax. Let's go to the TypeScript file and create a new function called greet. Let greet equal to arrow function. Console.log. Hi there. Simple function does nothing. ये complicated लग रहा है? Something like this maybe. Let greet equal to an arrow function which logs hi there on the screen. Simple function, nothing too complicated. What happens when I compile it down to ES 2020? 2020 में तो arrow functions आ गए थे. तो when I convert my arrow function from this TypeScript file to a JavaScript file, let's try to do it. npx tsc-b. तो क्या निकल के आता है? Arrow function ही निकल के आता है. Because 2020 JavaScript ECMAScript standard says कि arrow functions are a thing. This code will run on any browser that supports the ECMAScript 2020 standard. But if I change this to 2016, then what gets printed out? If you look at the JavaScript file now, oh, it's still the same. Maybe there's an older version I have to do. ES5. Let's change it to ES5, which is an even older version, and then try to compile it. The JavaScript file now looks like this. Where greet equal to, let hai hi nahi, where hai. Greet is not an arrow function anymore. It is function space, whatever, brackets and then the body. So what does that tell you? कि आप पे है how old of a version of JavaScript you want to create. Preferably you want to create a new one. अब 2016 तक की compatibility तो सब में होगी. Most browsers will be compatible with ES 2015, ES 2016 code. So, hello. हाँ भाई. दीदी को मैसेज करो और उनसे पैसे डलवा दो उस कार्ड में. हाँ उठा लेंगे. उनको बोल दो सीसी में 1 लाख भर दे. 1 लाख खर्च होगा ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा सीसी में. अभी 5 लाख की लिमिट है, तो 1 लाख भरवा लो उसमें, तो फिर पे हो जाएगा. ओके. मदरफकिंग एडिटर्स. इतना महंगा लैपटॉप मेरा भी नहीं है भाई. ही इज गेटिंग M4 which he told me is 3 lakhs or 2.5 lakhs or something, but I got an OTP for 4 lakhs. I don't know what he's buying. All right, we're done with target. सबको समझ आया? Insufficient funds guys. Everyone's गरीब today. Target is ES. ये target समझ आ गया? All good to go. कौन से टारगेट में कन्वर्ट करना है? मैं बस कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट दिखा रहा हूँ. वैसे देर आर मेनी, यू माइट हैव टू डील विद मेनी ऑफ देम. टुडे वी डोंट हैव टू डील विद मच. इवन टारगेट यू डोंट चेंज यूजुअली अनलेस यू हैव टू सपोर्ट अ वेरी ओल्ड डिवाइस. यू डोंट रियली टच टारगेट. रूट डिर एंड आउट डिर सिंपल है. व्हाट इज द प्रॉब्लम विद दिस कोड? अभी जो हम कोड लिख रहे हैं इसमें एक बहुत बड़ी प्रॉब्लम है, विच इज कि इफ यू एवर इनिशियलाइज अ गिट रिपोजिटरी ओवर हियर एंड मान लो यू हैव 10 सेपरेट टाइपस्क्रिप्ट फाइल्स. You have user.ts also. You have, I don't know, classroom.ts also. When you start the TypeScript compiler, classroom.js exists in the same folder as index.js, as user.js, and user.ts also exists. सब कुछ एक ही फोल्डर में आ गया. What is the problem? When I initialize Git over here, when I create a GitHub repository, उसमें मैं TypeScript files भी publish करने लग जाऊंगा to GitHub, JavaScript files भी publish करने लग जाऊंगा. If I right now initialize an empty Git repository and do a git add dot, it will add the TypeScript files also, the JavaScript files also. But JavaScript files तो auto generated हैं. They are auto generated files. You shouldn't push them to TypeScript. They are generated by the TypeScript compiler. No developer needs to read through them on GitHub. No developer needs to pull them from GitHub on their machine. Developers in your team, in your company, should only pull this TypeScript file, this TypeScript file, this TypeScript file. They should not pull the JavaScript files. So, what is the fix? You might say here, git ignore डाल दो. Create a git ignore file. You can do that. But you will have to keep updating the git ignore file. If I create a dot git ignore file कि GitHub या git इनको फाइल्स को इग्नोर कर देना, तो यहाँ पे I will have to add index.js, classroom.js, user.js. अब कल को मैंने नई फाइल बना दी तो I have to add another new file.js. This git, it will be very hard for me to track and make sure कि सारी फाइल्स मैंने वो कर दी है. तो usually the way you write code in TypeScript is, पहले मैं सारी JavaScript files निकाल देता हूँ. Let me delete all the JavaScript files. I have 3 TypeScript files over here. Let me create a new folder called, कुछ भी बुला सकते हो. I am going to call it source, src, and let me move all 3 of these to the source folder. Now I have a source folder which has a classroom.ts, index.ts, user.ts, 3 TypeScript files. What I will do is, I will tell the TypeScript compiler कि यार my root dir is ./source. मेरा टाइपस्क्रिप्ट कोड यहां प्रेजेंट है, एंड माई out dir where I want to spit out the JavaScript files is dot slash. Some people try to store it in the build folder, some people store it in the dist or distribution folder कि ये JavaScript code मैं distribute करूंगा to my server. I will deploy this JavaScript code. This is my distribution. So this is the source code. This is where the JavaScript files are stored. अब अगर मैं compile करता हूँ code को, what did I change? root dir and out dir. If I compile my code now, npx tsc-p, a new dist folder is created. JavaScript files are over here. TypeScript files are over here. Folder structuring is very well. एक दूसरे को conflict नहीं कर रहे हैं. They are not present in the same folder. They are present separately, working fine. That is how you should structure your TypeScript projects. हम जो भी करेंगे, our input folder is going to be source, output is going to be dist. Why is this beneficial now? क्योंकि अब मुझे डॉट गिट इग्नोर में सिर्फ एक फोल्डर डालना है. आई जस्ट वॉन्ट टू पुट वन फोल्डर इन माई डॉट गिट इग्नोर, कि इग्नोर द कंप्लीट फोल्डर. आई डोंट वॉन्ट टू पुश दिस टू गिटहब. प्लीज इग्नोर दिस कंप्लीट फोल्डर. ओनली दिस सोर्स फोल्डर शुड गो टू गिटहब. एंड आई एम गुड टू गो. नाउ आई कैन एड 20 different files here. Their JavaScript versions that are created here will always be ignored. That is what the root dir and out dir are. Similarly, there's more of them. Remove comments, as you can guess. If you set it to true, so your JavaScript file will not have any comments that you created in the TypeScript file. If you write some comments in the TypeScript file, and if you have remove comments set to true, your JavaScript file will not have comments. No implicit any. This is another one. There you go. It is commented right now. If it is commented, by default it is true. No implicit any. By default तो true ही होता है. If you remember, जब मैं कोड लिख रहा था, if I added name over here, it complained. Name is declared, but value is not used. इसको ignore करो. Parameter name implicitly has an any type. कि आपने इसको explicitly नहीं दी any type. It implicitly has an any type. The reason the compiler complained is because no implicit any is true by default. कोड बेस में कोई भी implicit any नहीं होना चाहिए. It is true by default, which is why the compiler is complaining over here with this error. How can I fix it? या तो I actually fix it, या फिर ऐसे यार मेरा कोड थोड़ा गंदा ही है अभी. I am starting very fast. I have to move very fast. No implicit any will be true. And if you do that, false, my bad. True तो by default ही होता है. Now if you look at it, the TypeScript error goes away. The red squiggly goes away. There's still a warning that I'm not using this name variable. I can use it if, there you go. But the point is, I did not have to give it a type anymore. And the compiler isn't complaining. Why? Because मैंने बोला no implicit any false. Allow कर दो implicit any. No implicit any is false, which means implicit any is true. Implicitly any को allow कर दो. And that is what is happening over here. This has an implicit any type. If I hover over it, name has type any right now. Implicitly, देना ही नहीं पड़ा. Cool. This is some of the common tsconfig flags that you play with. There are many more. We'll see as time goes by if we need to deal with any more of them. These are the common ones. Cool. Let's do I don't think we need a poll at this point. We can do one. दो ही important concept बचे हैं difficult. Interfaces and types. And maybe arrays. Let's try to do these three today. And then we'll do these three tomorrow. And अगर कल time मिला, there is some advanced TypeScript APIs also that we'll do tomorrow. ठीक है? Today, let's do a pause, a small 2-minute break. Let's do Q&A for 2 minutes. Then we're going to get into interfaces and types, which is where you will be spending most of your time when you're writing code. All right, let's look at Q&A for a minute. tsconfig, please. What about tsconfig? How to run index.js after? How to run index.js after changing the folder? Like this, node dist /index.js. As simple as that. How to define types for hooks? Oh, that is a good question. Function. It's just a function, right? Use user. Hello. Sorry guys, just 1 second. Seven zero seven one three five. Oh, what the fuck? All right. Hook ke liye simple enough, right? It's just a function. So if it takes a user as an input, which let's say is a number for now, it'll be this, and return type would be. That is a great question. It might. I mean, depends. It can be a simple number also. What is it? Basically, you can create a state variable here, right? Const x comma set x equal to use state, and let's say you're just returning x, in which case the return value will be number, but you might return x comma set x. Then the return type will be an object which has x as number and whatever, set x as whatever the type of this guy is, which is some React type with a generic. Let's not go there, but yeah, something like React dot dispatch whatever. If let's say x is a number, then something like this. So it's just a function. A hook is just a function. Return type and input type will be similar. Yeah. All right. How can I convert an existing project to TypeScript? There's no easy way. You start with very less strict TS config. You add this over here, no implicit any false, so that your code incrementally, slowly you make it better and better. You add types everywhere. Then eventually you flip this on to true, and migrate your code base from JavaScript to TypeScript. Even though, it's just like a very hard and long process to figure out the types everywhere and move a JS project to a TypeScript. All right, 2 more important concepts for today. Then I'll just do doubts. Interfaces and types. There's one big problem that exists until now is we have only used primitive types. We have only used primitive types, name, string, or x number, things like these. We have not used non-primitive types. What if there is a user object that looks like this: name Harkirat, age 21. Iski type kaise doge? How will you give a type of an object? Let's say the function that we have defined, greet, takes a user as an input, not a name which is a string, but a complex object as an input. And then greets the complex object. So console.log hello plus user.name. What should the type be of user? It is an object. It's actually very simple. It is what you would guess. Rather than it being a string, it is no longer a string, but an object which has a key called name, which is a string. You can put a semicolon over here. You can put comma over here. It has an age, which is also not a string, but a number. This is how you can define the type of this user object. It is not a simple primitive like number or string. It is a more complex object like this. Now I can log user.name over here. If I try to log user.firstname, it complains. It tells me, हरकीरत यहाँ पे तो name और age दो ही exist करते हैं. Only name and age exist over here. First name does not. So you're getting the benefits of TypeScript. You have been able to assign a type to a variable, which is an object, which is a complex object. It is not as simple as a string. Let me try to call it. Greet will be called with what? Greet will be called with, as you can see, it's already helping you out. कि यार इसके अंदर एक user argument है whose type looks something like this. So I can simply call it with an object where I have to give a name, Harkirat, and whatever, an age, let's say 21. Let's say. यहाँ पे I'll log the name. Cool. This is how you can define an object as an argument. But there is one problem here. Pehle to do we understand this? Only then can we move to interfaces. So to recap, when you want to define a function which takes an argument as an input, which is a object, it gets more complicated with an array. But if it is an object, तो आपको type ऐसी देनी पड़ती है. Object, name is a string, age is a number. This is what the object looks like. When I write something like this, let user equal to name Harkirat, age 21. If I write a random object over here, इसकी type भी आप देखो तो automatically infer हो गई. It has an automatically inferred type. Here it is an object, name is a string, age is a number. I can also copy this and do this. I can explicitly give it the type, the complex object type, or it is happening implicitly over here. Now, if this object you have to pass to a function, उस function की type भी तो वही होगी. The function will also have the same type over here. So, this is how you define the types for an object. And now I can, whatever. I can also pass user as an input over here. Something like this. This is how I've defined my user. This is the implicit type of the user. The same type I have given over here. And I am calling the greet function for this user. Do we understand this? I have a feeling not a lot of people understand this. All right, we will answer doubts now. I think we'll only be able to do interfaces and types today, which is totally fine. We will just do interfaces and types today. Let me answer some questions from Q&A. Why we use let again? That's not related to TypeScript. That is just let and const were introduced in some specific ES version. To let gives you a bunch of benefits. If you've heard of hoisting, where mein hoisting hoti hai, let mein nahi hoti hai, common interview question. But const will give you a runtime error if you're trying to change it ever, because const is a constant. Let will not give you a runtime error. Where did not have any such woe. Where was the original way to define a variable? Let and const are the new, better ways to do it. Let has some benefits over where's, and const ka to clear benefit hai कि if you use a const, you can't change its value. What if I call more keys inside the object? Oh, if your object has, an address, which is a more complex key, it will look like this. Address has a street name, which is a string, and a country, which is a string. And it can keep going more and more complex. Dictionary in Python, I think it's similar. Dictionaries in Python, hash maps in Java, objects in JavaScript are very similar. Differences between interfaces and type, we'll come to it very soon. But hold your horses, we'll get there. What if we call more keys inside the object? Answered that. Repeat. Anyways, we will test the code before production. That's not true. You will test it, but you will make errors as a developer. So it doesn't matter how much you test it. It's good to have, TypeScript checking these errors again and again, and making sure nothing, goes whatever. Does type checking automatically. Sure, you will test your code, but you can't always 100% test your code. There will be some bugs from time to time. All right. Let me recap this. Types can be simple. Let name equal to Harkirat. The type over here is what? First name equal to Harkirat. Type of first name is a string. Let age equal to number. Let's say 21. इसका type क्या है? String. इसका type क्या है? Number. I can give it explicitly or they can come implicitly. But what if there is a complex object? Let user equal to first name Harkirat, age 21. I want to create an object which has two keys. I don't want to create two separate variables. When I create this object, इसका type क्या होगा? If you hover over it, it tells you कि Harkirat, इसका type is this. It is an object which has a first name and an age. First name is a string, age is a number. That is how you define an object in TypeScript, or the type of an object in TypeScript. Question is, how do you give it explicitly over here? You can give it like this, which will make the code look very ugly now. But what am I saying? User is not a string, not a number, but an object. User is an object which has a first name, which is a string, and a age, which is a number. Something like this. User is an object which has a first name, which is a string, age, which is a number. This is the type of user. It is not a string. It is not a number. It is not a boolean. It is an object which has a first name and a last name field, or whatever, age field. This is a string, this is a number. Same thing is true for a function. अगर एक function है that is going to take a user as an input, what is the type of this user? It is the same type over here, right? It is an object which has a first name, which is a string, and a age, which is a number. So this is how you define the type of an object. Question is, what is the problem here, and why are interfaces better? What we are trying to understand is interfaces. The problem over here, hopefully you understand. I have repeated logic in two places. Don't repeat yourself is the most common principle of computer science. I am repeating myself here and here. If I have a third field here called last name in the future, I will have to change it in two separate places. First name, age, last name. First name, age, last name. The variable will also have to have a last name over here. Sync. So I am repeating the same thing in two different places if I am ever changing the type of the object. Wouldn't it be nice अगर मैं ऐसा लिख पाता कि यार let user type equal to first name, which is a string, last name, which is a string, and age, which is a number. ये बढ़िया नहीं होता? If I was able to create a variable and हर जगह I could have said this, यार this is the user type, this is the user type, this is more readable. पहली वाली चीज was very complex, ऑब्जेक्ट बन गया था दो जगह, ये तो रीडेबल है. Rather than the type of this user being a number, rather than it being a string, it is a new type called user type. ये user type जो है वो कुछ ऐसा दिखता है. But the problem is, let user type equal to object. ये तो एक रन टाइम ऑब्जेक्ट बन गया. You can define a variable called user type, but you can't use TypeScript over there like this. This can be a normal object. ये सही है, इसमें कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. But what I want to define is a TypeScript construct. यहाँ पे मैं रन टाइम वेरिएबल नहीं डाल सकता. I can write one over here or two. I can write this, but like I can't write whatever a runtime variable over here. I can write it actually. इसका मतलब ये हो जाएगा कि this user can only be this exact object, but I can't define types, custom types like this as a runtime variable. क्या ये object है, ये मेरा custom type है, इसको मैं यहाँ पे use करूँगा. That is what user type refers to a value but is being used as a type here. कितना बढ़िया error दिया इसने. यार ये तो एक वैल्यू है, दिस इज तो एन ऑब्जेक्ट, वाई आर यू यूजिंग इट एज अ टाइप ओवर हियर. अगर आपको टाइप बनाना है, इट इज गिविंग यू द सोल्यूशन ऑल्सो. क्रिएट अ टाइप, डोंट क्रिएट अ वेरिएबल, क्रिएट अ टाइप कॉल्ड यूजर टाइप, जहां यू कैन हैव अ स्ट्रिंग, नंबर, वॉट एवर कीज यू वॉन्ट. दिस इज हाउ यू डिफाइन अ टाइप एंड दिस इज हाउ यू डिफाइन एन इंटरफेस. इनमें बहुत छोटा सा फर्क होता है. इंटरफेसेस एंड टाइप्स हैव सम डिफरेंसेस. फर्स्ट वी आर अंडरस्टैंडिंग इंटरफेसेस, विच इज व्हाई आई हैव डिफाइंड दिस कस्टम इंटरफेस कॉल्ड यूजर टाइप. इसको मैं बुला तो कुछ भी सकता हूं, बट आई एम कॉलिंग इट यूजर टाइप, विच हैज अ फर्स्ट नेम, लास्ट नेम एंड एज. These are the three keys over here. And I'm saying the greet function will take a user as an input, which is of type this. And यहाँ पे, you can do whatever you want. You can greet the user based on their age, name, whatever. This is what an interface is. The starting point of an interface. Interface gives you 10 different things. This is the starting point of an interface. Hopefully this code is easier to understand and look at compared to इससे पहले जो हमने लिख रखा था. ये पूरा interface I can remove from here and explicitly give here and here. This was the code we were writing earlier. But since this is so verbose, इतना बड़ा हो गया, ये इतना बड़ा logic दो जगह हो गया, I have done this. I have defined this variable separately, this interface separately, and used it here and here. Do we understand interfaces in JavaScript? Just the starting point, TypeScript. It is, think of it like a custom type that you have created. It is a bunch of other things, but think of it like a custom type that you have created for your project. Has the poll been started? Sort of. 87%, 85%. Cool. 9:30 already. Let me do types. We'll recap them tomorrow, so don't worry if you don't understand. Thoda, let me try to introduce types also. Then we will call it for today and not go any further. So to recap, we understood all of this today and we are trying to do interfaces and types today. Tomorrow we restart from interfaces, do types again, do all of this, and then offline video may I do advanced TypeScript. I think there might already be a video, which would be great. If not, I will re-record. But इसके छोड़ के थोड़ी और TypeScript concepts हैं, I'll cover in an offline video. All right. Let's understand interfaces one more time. How can you assign types to objects? For example, something like this. The answer is you create an interface. कि यार ये तो बहुत custom type है. User जो variable है, it has a very custom type. This is how you can define the custom type as an interface. And if you look at it, now I've defined the interface like this. Interface user. It has a first name, last name, email and age. And the isLegal function is not taking an age as an input, which is a number. It is taking a user object as an input, which is of this user interface type. And here, of course, we do the standard checks. If the user's age is greater than 18, return true, else return false. So this is how you define a custom complex interface in JavaScript or type in JavaScript. Here is some similar code in React for the people who understand. For the people who don't, that is fine. But if I ask you to create a React component that takes to-dos as an input and renders them, so here also, if you look at it, the to-do component takes to-do as an input, and this to-do is of type this interface. इसका type क्या है? This full object का type ये है. I repeat, ये जो पूरा object है, इसका type is to-do input. Let me copy this and show this locally. Let me not return anything here. This is what a React component looks like, right? अभी तक हमने लिखे हैं React components. Return some div over here. What am I saying? I am taking an object as an input. I can call this props as well, right? And then यहाँ पे I can render props.title. This is easier to understand. Let's write it like this. Okay, I take some props as an input. The type of this props is to-do input, where to-do is a key. मतलब props.todo will be something which is of type this. And यहाँ पे there is a title, description and done. 3 different things. I know this one's complicated to look at. But basically a to-do component call कैसे होगा? It will be called like this, right? To-do equal to some complex object that has a title. Go to gym has a description. Go to gym from 8 to 10 and then done. Let's say this is not done yet. This is how you will render the component. How have we defined the component? It is going to take some props as an input. In props there will be a to-do key. That to-do key has this type right here. one interface is using another interface. I can also do this. This also works. Okay, the to do input has a to do which has a title, description, and done. That is what we're passing here. Let's say you are passing another thing, last done at equal to some timestamp, let's say, some date. Then I can add another key over here, last done at, which will be, whatever, of type date. So the props are of this type. This type has two keys, to do and last done at. That is what we're passing here. If you write the same code in React and TypeScript, you will feel better, or whatever. Your React code will become type safe. Again, we'll recap this tomorrow. So if you don't understand it, it's fine. Cool. ये तो आज रहने ही दो. Implementing interfaces तो दिमाग घूम जाएगा. We'll do it tomorrow. Quickly, let me take you through types. Again, we will recap it tomorrow. Interfaces and types are both sort of very close to each other. Types are very similar to interfaces. Types let you aggregate data together. Same thing as an interface lets you do. Type user equal to something like this. But they let you do a few other things. Abhi tak, we had defined an interface user which had a name, string, age, number, something like this. I can define a type called user which looks similar. Notice कोई फर्क नहीं है. Whenever I create a variable now, let user equal to name Harkirat, age 21. I can use the user interface. I can use the user type. कोई फर्क नहीं है. I can use either one of these. ये मेरे पे depend करता है which one of these I want to use. Interfaces give you something extra. Types give you something extra. Let's understand what types give you. Whenever you are defining a type, you can use it to union values. Union का मतलब ये भी हो या ये भी हो. ये union होगा. You can call it a union, right? ये भी हो सकता है और ये भी हो सकता है. दोनों में से कुछ भी हो सकता है. So, अगर मैं चाहता हूं कि there is a function sum that takes either a number as an input or a string as an input, यहां पे या तो string हो या फिर number हो, तो I can define a type called string or number, let's say, and I can say कि भाई you are going to be either a string or a number, and here I can say इसका type is string or number, इसका type is string or number. Here I can return whatever, a plus b. Ugh. Why can it not be? Why can the plus operator not be a string or number and string or number? I don't know. Let me just log it for now. We'll debug this. I'm excited to see why that is. Why can't even plus this? Sorry, taking a small detour over here. Type string or number is string or number, or let's give it a better name. Some input, let's say. What were we discussing? We were discussing about types. What are we discussing about types? यार ये आपको एक चीज देते हैं जो कि इंटरफेसेस नहीं देते. You cannot do interface sum equal to string or number. ये आप नहीं कर सकते. Whenever you are defining an interface, you define it like this. There is no equal to over there. But when you are defining types, you can define them like this. So unions is one thing that a type gives you. The question you have to figure out is, which I'll ask you after the class completes, is why is it not letting me do a plus b over here? Why is the TypeScript compiler saying I can't put a plus over here between a string or a string or a string or a number or a number or a string or a number or a number? कोई reason होगा. We'll debug it. But let me complete types very quickly. जस्ट लाइक इट लेट्स यू डू यूनियंस, इट लेट्स यू डू इंटरसेक्शंस. इंटरसेक्शन का मतलब क्या होता है कि यार इन दोनों की इंटरसेक्शन मुझे चाहिए. इफ देयर इज एन एम्प्लॉय विच हैज अ नेम एंड अ स्टार्ट डेट एंड अ मैनेजर विच हैज अ नेम एंड अ डिपार्टमेंट, आई कैन से देयर इज अ टाइप टीम लीड विच इज एम्प्लॉय एंड मैनेजर. उसका नेम भी है, उसकी स्टार्ट डेट भी है, उसका डिपार्टमेंट भी है. द टीम लीड इज एन एम्प्लॉय and a manager. So it has a name which is present in both the places. It has a start date which is just present here. It has a department which is just present here. There is a interface called manager which has a name and a age. There is an interface called employee which has a name again, but department. I am saying I want to define a type now. I can't define an interface that lets me do joins like these. So I will define a type called team lead, which is a manager and an employee. A manager and an employee. मतलब team lead कैसा दिखेगा? It looks something like this. It will have a name which is a string. It will have an age which is a number. ये दोनों यहाँ से आ रहे हैं. And then it will have a department which is a string again. So I can define it like this, बहुत मेहनत करके, or I can simply be like this and this. If I hover over this, it's hard to see it, but let's say I write let t colon team lead equal to an object. तो यहाँ पे मुझे तीनों कीज देनी पड़ेंगी. Name हरकीरत, age 21 and whatever. Department. अगर if I don't give the department, Typescript compiler is complaining. Department is declared over here. आपने यहाँ दिया नहीं है. Property department is missing in this type. तो I have to give it a department as well. There you go. Now the TypeScript error goes away. Cool. That is another thing it lets you do. It lets you do a join like this. It lets you do a union. Interfaces don't let you do that. That is why, whatever. Types are better at something. Interfaces are better at some other thing. Interfaces you can implement in a class. अभी हमने discuss नहीं किया. We'll discuss tomorrow. Try to go through it. You can actually implement an interface into a class. Very similar to interfaces in Java if you've done them. But I will take a pause here. I think that's good enough for today. थोड़ा overwhelming हो गया. That is fine. To recap, we discussed today various types of languages, slightly meta stuff, not really needed for TypeScript. Understood what is TypeScript, how is it different from JavaScript. It does not execute itself. It gets converted to JavaScript, which is what executes. Understood a little bit about the TypeScript compiler, some basic types in TypeScript, numbers, string, things like these. The tsconfig file, a file where we can change some configuration parameters, interfaces and types. ये दोनों we did not understand really well. I would assume some of you did not. So tomorrow we will start over here. Everything until this point is a prerequisite for tomorrow. And यहाँ से यहाँ तक we'll try to cover everything. If possible, try to cover this yourself. There is another one over here called advanced TypeScript or whatever. More useful TypeScript APIs. If you do the first one, try to do this as well. Both of these we'll try to finish off this week. All right. Cool. With that, I'm going to answer questions now. And we'll go from there. If you understood everything, class is off. If you have no doubts, feel free to drop off. For people who do have doubts, I'm opening chat now, and I'll just answer questions from there. Second. All right. There you go. Some people have the answer for TypeScript. WebRTC type narrowing. What is that? Sorry. Oh, you mean this thing right here? That's what you're trying to show? I would assume that's what you're trying to show. Cool. In TypeScript, the plus operator works differently for numbers and string types. When you define the sum and put as this thing, compiler doesn't know if A and B will be the same type. So we can show this leads to TypeScript error. Why can it not sum a string or a number is my question. Like I get it, but does it not know it needs to concatenate? I thought we saw it a while back. Let x equal to 1, let y equal to ASD, let z equal to x plus y. It is able to do it. It can sum a number and a string. Question is, if I give them very difficult types. Let s equal to string or number. Sorry, type s equal to string or number. If I give them these types, then also it works. Then why can I not do function sum, which takes x as an input, which is s, y as an input, which is s, and returns x plus y? Up it begins to give me an error. How can the TypeScript compiler not complain over here? Oh, it knows x is a number. That's why. That makes sense. It knows x is a number and not a number or this thing. But that is fine, right? It can sum. So basically what I'm getting is TypeScript can sum number and number. TypeScript can sum string and number. TypeScript can sum string plus string. But TypeScript can't sum string or number plus string or number. I'm sure there's an easy way to fix it also. Some of you will tell me very soon. I will Google it as well. But yeah, this is the current findings. Oh, okay, it can, do this, this and this. But if you try to tell TypeScript, add this and this, it starts to complain. Yeah, someone gave another solution, which is, not the best solution. You're adding runtime checks. This is the solution that someone else gave. Okay, if do something like this. You can do that, but yeah, this is like a bunch of runtime checks now. You will see this in the JavaScript file also. ये जो checks हैं, ये JavaScript files में भी रहेंगे. So that's not the best thing because also like I want a string and a number to be concatenated also, which I guess will happen here. But yeah, I mean this is a workaround. But whenever you start to do this, this is a runtime check. If I compile your TS code to JS, if you look at index.js now, you will see this check is here also. This is a weird, it's like introducing type checking to JavaScript, which you can, but that is what TypeScript is for. So you shouldn't really need to do it. All right, but this is like good solutions and good discussions. I'm sure there's an easier way to fix it though. We'll try it out. This thing. In TypeScript, okay. I think you are the same thing. One second. Opening a bunch of docs. Smart India Hackathon's final. Someone made it there. That's good. The reason why you're not able to plus or string a number because the first argument. Oh, where did it go? Number, because the first argument becomes a number and the second argument becomes a string. You can't add them. It will give an error. You can add them though. We just saw that. You can add a number and a string in JavaScript. That's exactly what I'm doing here. Let x is a number, y is a string, and I'm creating x plus y. That's not a problem in JavaScript. That's not a problem in TypeScript. This is TypeScript code we've written. It's not a problem here. What there's another user in user. Oh, yeah, you can do this. Like recursive types you're asking about, right? What if there is a let user type? Oh, can you do it? Equal to, whatever. Username, string, and, not yet, let type, user type, username, string, and users or, whatever, brothers or siblings is going to be user type array, something like this. Can you do this? You can do this. Yeah, there you go. You can have a recursive type like this. We haven't covered this syntax. We'll cover it tomorrow. Theme of this thing. I mean, tell me how I can find it. I don't know. I Googled it and found it, but I don't know where to find it now. Extensions. Where are the extensions? There you go. I should find it here somewhere, right? I think I installed it from here. I don't know what this is. Why do I have a Git thingy opened here? Oh, that's source control. My bad. Run and debug extensions. There you go. And you'll find it here. Oh, One Dark Pro. There you go. That's the one. Bun is much better than Node.js. It also has built-in TypeScript compiler, so there's no need to compile TypeScript to JavaScript. Yeah, there's no need to do it, but there's still a compilation step, right? So yes, there's also like something called TS node that'll do the same thing. It'll do it in one step. Doesn't mean your compilation process is not slow. It's still slow, and of course, it's much better than whatever Node.js. But still, you have to go through two steps if you're doing. Unless one is directly executing TypeScript code, I don't think it is. I could be wrong actually. They might have written a TypeScript compiler that directly runs the code and not a JavaScript compiler. I don't think that's the case though. So yeah, when you define some, okay, answer that. Where did that bun wala question go? Yeah, I lost it. Bhaiya, what is the name of the theme? Answer that. Bun saves a lot of time by doing this very quickly. Yeah. Lagging because Zoom uses WebRTC, that is correct. Can we use YouTube-like technology to make streaming better? We can, but then there's a lot of latency, which I think is fine. Like, how often do we ask doubts? Not very often. Like, at the end, there is a discussion. Maybe I start the chat, everyone posts message, I answer the messages. There is no real need for there to be if there's a 10-second delay, there's a 10-second delay. That is a great point. You might have, because it's much easier to build that compared to WebRTC. So let me write this down in my idea doc. That's actually a great idea. At least for our classes, it makes no sense for them to be UDP or whatever sub-second latency, because we rarely do two-way communication. And when we do, it's just a chat is open. You guys can post questions. Even if there's a 10-second delay, it is fine. So we'll do RTMP and HLS for webinar. That's a great point. You might have given me some gold here, sir. All right, more happy chat puja. Same to you. No, they can be added. That's what I'm saying. String and number can be added. It doesn't complain. What is the meaning of sending to in is legal? There is no meaning. It is just to show you that developer agar dumb hua, there is a function called is legal that, let's say, takes a user as an input, which is a complex type, name, string, age, number. And it returns, whatever. If a user dot age is greater than 10 or 18, return true means the user is legal to vote in, let's say, whatever, a country, and else return false. There is no point of passing in 10 to this function. But if developers are dumb, they might think yaar argument iska age tha and not a user object, which is why they might do it. And which is why you should have a object over here rather than, or you should have TypeScript over here so that it complains. It tells you कि यार आप number दे रहे हो जहाँ पे एक user object चाहिए. That is why you need TypeScript, because it's telling you कि हाँ भाई तुम कुछ गलत कर रहे हो यहाँ पे. I know there is no point of sending to over here, but developer को नहीं पता है ना. He might be writing this code in a separate file. He might assume I have to pass in a number. He might assume I have to pass in user dot age over here. So you have to tell it कि I have to pass just user over here. So it is a week 13 operated on. Yeah, that's what I told Aryan to fix yesterday. I saw that. कल ही देखा मैंने. Let me ask. Please try fixing her keynote. It got like added to 2 courses, did not get added to something like that, but it'll happen by tonight. All right. All right. Notion docs. Super grateful for any advice. Kind of struggling with cloud deployment of the backend, but all features show front-end work locally. Sorry. You're building something for police work. Kind of struggling with cloud deployment on the backend. Purpose is something, what to build something. Problem is, during investigation, the social accounts accused. Oh. We just want to show the project. Let's see. Always put some dummy credentials here. It just helps. All right. This just seems like a. What is searching something for police? I would assume, but pretty cool. Let me know if you need any help with deployment or I don't know, access to code too. We have done deployment there. Sir, I should the build project Rust, but build project with Solana official video. Not able to understand. Like I understand in class. What can I do? What skill should I focus on for SD3? As currently I'm MERN stack developer, I have a little knowledge of DevOps and no system design in Java concept wise, but have less practical knowledge of system design. Please give some input so it will be easy for all. Okay. Coming to your first question, I understand build projects, understand road bus build projects Solana official video, but not able to understand. Like I understand in class. Okay. I am assuming your question is कि मैं खुद देख के समझ आ जाता है, खुद से नहीं हो पाता, तो वही भाई, you have to practice a lot, write a lot of code. थोड़ा क्लोन करके थोड़ा खुद से एक आइडिया बना के write some code, and you should be able to hopefully get this as muscle memory. And once you do, then it should be easier to write code yourself. And second question is for an SD3. I mean, they ask like a lot of system design. They ask DSA also, and unfortunately, on even in big tech, especially in big tech, everywhere they'll ask you at least 1-2 rounds of DSA. Probably machine coding if you're doing whatever, a remote offer, even like probably startups will make you code a little bit, the machine coding. That's pretty much it. That's a brief of what might be expected from an SD3. Although I haven't worked at companies where aise levels hote hain, it's like very hard for me to tell. But I think that's what they ask. I am pretty good at backend Node.js. I've been learning Golang for the past 2 weeks. I want to learn Fiber as the backend framework and ENT as the ORM. This is the first time I'm hearing about Fiber. Any online API documentation exams you can start building with Fiber. What Fiber? Oh, yeah, I've seen this one. You can use this, although I understand the fascination. It looks very similar to Express, this specific framework. So yeah, probably do it once. But I think Jin. What was the other one? I forgot the name. 1 second. HTTP. This is client. There you go. Jin hi tha. Yeah, there's this other framework. Apparently, this has more, better benchmarks on speed. So just do that. Just don't. I mean, if it helps you move from Express to whatever, this Fiber framework easier, if it makes your life easier, do it once. But most code bases I've seen are in this framework like Jin. So maybe, it's probably very easy for you to move from there to there. Just like random advice, feel free to also not take it. Where is the other question? ENT as the ORM. I haven't used ORMs in Golang, but I would assume that sounds good enough. What's the backend framework in ORM used in industry nowadays? In Golang, I have no idea. Whatever you find is probably right, or even just look at a code base and see what they use. What does List Monk use? I don't think they use either of these HTTP frameworks. I think they use something else only. But ORM we'll have to check here. कहाँ पे था इनका code? Internal dev. I saw it last year. Their code base is dev most probably. Nope. There you go. Did I see SQLX? Seems like they use SQLX, which I would assume is the way they connect to the database. General extension Golang's database. Yeah, so they probably write raw queries everywhere. Yeah. So seems like they don't use an ORM. That's what I remembered also suddenly. And where does app come from? What does it use? Prepare queries. Okay. कहाँ होते हैं इसके routes? Let's see. It'll be one of these over here. Which one is it though? Events capture paginator answer store. Let's just try to find it here if we can really quickly. Let's go to list.co. Yeah, can someone quickly find the routes file over here, or whatever HTTP framework they're using? It's here somewhere. I can just go through the issues. I remember seeing it a while back. I can't find that issue. I found like an open API library for that specific HTTP framework. I totally forgot what framework it was though. So can quickly someone go through it and tell me? Until then I'll answer all the questions. I'll come back and do it. Okay, answer that one. So even in Rust, every time I've sort of written code, I've used SQLSX only. Rust also has a trait called SQLSX, which lets you connect, through raw queries to SQL. So you don't have to use an ORM. I'm sure there are benefits of doing it. So, find one and use whichever one you like. Alrighty, moving on. Block hash doubt equal to await. Why should we include this in both frontend and backend in the cloud wallet? You should include this in the frontend because your serialization won't happen. You should include this in the backend because user has sent you a transaction. God knows आप उस transaction को अभी process करोगे. You might process it after 10 minutes. You might try to send it, but it might fail. You might have to retry it. When you are retrying, you need the current latest block over there, right? You don't need an old user provided block. So you are doing a lot of sanitization of the user's transaction over there. User आपको एक transaction भेज रहा है, आप उसका recent block hash change कर रहे हो because user ने आपको शायद 1 घंटा पहले भेजी होगी वो transaction. You don't know when it came. We have retry logic. You might have sent it once, it might have failed. You can't send the same transaction from the server. You have to re-add the new block hash, re-sign the transaction and send it. So that is why you need it on the server, you need it on the client because the serialization of the transaction would fail if you do it on the client without the block hash and the fee pair. Yeah, we should do it on the backend for sure. Try doing it on the front end without, passing it in. You will see serialization will fail because serialization checks कि क्या आपने fee pair डाला है, क्या आपने वो डाला है, fee pair डाला है, recent block hash डाला है. Now what you can do is you can look at the serialization function, see how it is serializing it into bytes, and remove those checks, or just do it over here and then repeat it on the backend. Use callback and use memo, not really useful anymore after React 19, but there's a video where we've covered a bunch of these extra hooks. I'll put it up. It's from cohort 2. Please create the video on relations. Yes. Akash, upload today's recording for tomorrow afternoon. I will on harkira.classes.co.in. What are the commands I need to initialize TypeScript locally on Mac? npx tsc-n. Same that we discussed in the beginning of the class. To initialize TypeScript project, right? npm init-y to initialize this thing init-y, an empty package.json and tsc-net to initialize the tsconfig.js file. Cool. This is done. This is done. All right. Opening chat one more time. Meetup. Oh, probably we can do it in Noida, whichever day you want. Like any day of the week in Noida. Postgres is there. Yeah, I mean, if you're using SQLX, it doesn't mean you can't use it with Postgres. You can use it with, it's SQLX. It's not MySQLSX. So you can use it with MySQL, you can use it with Postgres. They probably have a Postgres database. They use SQLX to connect to it. Whenever I run Visual Studio Code, WSL, it takes so much time because of CMD. I have no idea. Never been on a Windows machine for, years now. So the worst person to ask this question. Someone wants kids help. This thing, and this thing. All right, more. Notion docs. It happens when you add a plus a also. Yeah, because you're still adding a string plus number to a string plus number. So if you add a plus a, it will give you an error. Oh God, someone wrote this. Someone wrote this. You can do this. then you're taking away the benefits of TypeScript, right? If you're ever using any, then just put an any over here only. What's the benefit of whatever using TypeScript if you're eventually assuming it as any over here? So you can do it, you shouldn't do it though. What you've done over here, which is A as any, B as any. Cool. Whenever I run server, okay, answer that. Unit type also works in interfaces. Let's see. That would be a surprise for me. Inside an interface, you can do a union. That is correct. You can't do this. Interface user equal to whatever, A or B or C. You can't do this. You can totally do this. Name is a string or number. You can do this. You can't do the other thing I was showing. All right. What else? Web dev doubts. Return happens first, then use effect. Won't that change the earlier explanation we did, assuming otherwise? Life and death use prev. You're asking about the use prev hook. Your question is, first the return happens, then the use effect runs. That is correct. Won't that change all the earlier explanation we did assuming otherwise? What earlier explanation we did assuming otherwise? Life and death use prev. I don't understand this. Could you elaborate a little bit more? Can we store data only use ref.current? If you want to store data that you don't want in every render it gets refreshed, but you don't want it to cause a re-render, then you use refs or ref.current. And if you want or you can just store it in a state variable. What that will do is it will just cause a re-render whenever the state is updated. Export default app. What does default have to do here? Yeah, we're going to discuss this tomorrow. But long story short, there are two types of exports and imports. There are default imports and whatever value or whatever you want to call the other side, constant exports and imports. Where are the slides for today? We are going to discuss this tomorrow, but long story short, importing and exporting modules. You can either export functions like these. When you export them like these, you import them like this. If there is an export function add, export function subtract, then you import them like this. Import, destructure add from that file. Destructure, subtract from that file. But if you do a default export default, whatever, could be a number, could be a string, could be a class. Then the way you import it is import calculator pura, not an object which has calculator inside, pura calculator from /calculator. Or do whatever you want with that object. So when you do a default export, you import it by default over here. When you do a functional export, whatever, then you import it like this over here. That's the difference. Cool. All right. I think that is all I had. Or, all the Notion docs we had. Let's see. This one's done. Oh my God. That's a long one. Oh, TypeScript and Polymer is possible. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying. You have to add a bunch of these blocks and then the final implementation. I remember this. I had a very long block in one of the companies that I worked at. But yeah, you do it like this. The delayed call function will take, a function as an input which looks like this, returns void, or can take a function as an input like this, which could return a string, a number, or let's say a void. And then this is the final implementation of, whatever, void or string over here. So if you want, why would you want to do this? ये क्यों करना है? जब यहाँ पे, you have a void or string over here. Why do you need one which has a void? This gives you no benefit. The benefit you will get if you are returning a string over here and a void over here. If the input type and output type depend on each other, then, this makes sense. Otherwise, doing this doesn't make too much sense. No, after reading some Medium docs and GPT, I expect to lacks no true method overloading, lacks runtime information, limited support for dynamic polymorphism. Okay, you GPT'd a bunch of this. Why? Oh, crazy. While TypeScript supports various forms of polymorphism, it has some limitations. No true method overloading. TypeScript method overloading only applies to a function signatures, and it requires a single function implementation. Exactly. When you do polymorphism in C++, each of your function can have different implementations. But in our case, if you look at it, we have different function signatures. कि अगर फंक्शन ऐसा दिखता है तो void रिटर्न होगा, फंक्शन ऐसा दिखता है तो string रिटर्न होगा, let's say void रिटर्न होगा, but the implementation is the same. Versus in languages like C++, you can have two different functions which have different, the same name but different set of arguments. And that's what makes it true polymorphism. Lacks runtime information, runtime type information. TypeScript type system is erased during compilation. What does that mean? Lacks runtime type information. TypeScript type system is erased during compilation, meaning polymorph behavior based on types is limited to when what's enforceable at compile time with no runtime checks. I think this is very close. I could be wrong. I think this is very closely related to the first point. Okay, you have written some very polymorphic code. Okay, whatever, type 1, type 2, but you have a single implementation. जब ये जावास्क्रिप्ट में कन्वर्ट हो जाएगी तब तो देयर विल बी अ सिंगल फंक्शन ओवर देयर. Everyone is calling that single function with various types, but that doesn't matter because the body is the same compared to whatever another language where runtime pay, there are separate things that will happen based on what you call. If you call a function with a certain type of argument, one function body implementation will run. If you call it with a different argument, a different function body implementation would run. But in our case, sure आपने TypeScript में थोड़े types डालिए, but at runtime nothing changes. There is still a single function that is being called. Limited support for dynamic polymorphism. What is dynamic polymorphism? TypeScript's ability to dynamically change behavior based on runtime types is limited, as it lacks the types for certain runtime. Basically, I think this also feels very closely related to the first point, which is okay, all three of them don't let you define, or TypeScript doesn't let you define different functions for different types of inputs and outputs. So you don't really have polymorphism. You just have some runtime information, some compile time information, some type checking कि अगर input ऐसा है तो output ऐसा होना चाहिए, input ऐसा है तो output ऐसा होना चाहिए. But you don't get any true real runtime different logic running based on different inputs in TypeScript. So yeah. All right. Oh boy, that's a long question. You have a follow-up question. I have to cover a backend now. I will start it tomorrow. I already know React, so it will be easy for me to catch up with the front end. That's pretty good. Question. मैं अब Web3 cohort में शुरू करने जा रहा हूँ. I will not do it yet. Like finish until next year, only then pick it up. Don't pick Web3 right now. Like you started to do too many things too quickly. Just finish React first, get confident in one, and then then maybe start looking at that. Oh, someone found something that looks very interesting. Exactly. There's a issue open in TypeScript for exactly what we were looking for. And let's see what the explanation is. Operations are evaluated according to the types of the operands, not their identities. The left hand type is this, the right hand type is this, and the rule for plus disallows ambiguous operations like that. Whether or not LHS and RHS refer to the same variable, or what same would be. I guess the question is something else. This person is asking no, it's very similar only. Whether or not LHS refer to the same variable, or what same would even mean apart from their identifiers, isn't an input to the algorithm, nor is it clear how that could be generalized. Something similar to this. Can we close this issue already? I'm sorry, but I'm still not clear on the problem here. If I replace the union type to any, things will work normally. So what I'm confused here is the plus operand only accepts inputs with single types, but not union types. Seems like you can't do X plus Y if there's a union type. Doesn't matter what the union is. Could be string or number, could be string or bool, could be number or string or whatever. But you can't use the plus operator if there is a union type that you're adding. It's like pretty inactive. I would have hoped there would be a lot of discussion here. If you are sure about the... Okay, someone has something over here also. Relational comparison. Allow unsafe comparisons, string or number or this thing. This is a issue only. Oh boy. Less than 1 equal to A string or number, B number. Yeah. Basically, it seems like this is expected behavior. Like you can't add two types which are a union, and doesn't matter if you can add a string or a number. If it is a string or number and you're trying to add it to a string or number, it'll be a problem. Cool. Good find. Oh boy, it's a long one. I'm like, my beast backend not hosted but I have zero knowledge in TypeScript. Curious? No, I can't really read through the code because it'll probably be a lot. Let's look at the project. What does it do? Oh, is it like Duolingo? Oh no, it's like some AI app that lets you do things. Oh, cool. Yes, pretty good. I would assume it's like a bunch of GPT calls, or I don't know, some API that lets you translate. I also implemented master and started coding myself instead of AI. That's good. I promise whatever you say, that excuse will be given. Yeah, I mean, just keep at it. Seems like it's good what you're doing. Yeah, UI is very obviously V0'd, so try to fix that. The way else looks good. Like you have the standard things. You don't have your dist committed. If this is TS code, this is JavaScript code. Never mind. But yeah, you don't have your .env committed, for example. Fairly simple stuff. Looks good. Nothing out of the ordinary here. I'm just like build more complex projects. I don't see anything that you're doing wrong at the moment. But just start to code yourself. Maybe build the UI yourself also. But that's pretty much it. Nothing other than that. Cool. Did anyone find what framework they use? First, DB prepare queries. Constants. There you go. Init HTTP server. Echo, that's the one. They use Echo, which is again basically doesn't matter. You can use Echo. You mentioned Fiverr. Gin is apparently fast. Doesn't matter. Pick any one of these. But yeah, cool. That is all I had. Anyone else have any question? Anything I can help answer, or shall we meet tomorrow to complete TypeScript? Between Pune, not anytime soon. I think Noida maybe we can do as needed. Do I create an API for fetching results from the front end if I'm integrating my custom AI model to the backend? We create an API of a custom AI model for fetching results for the front end. You create a backend which talks to an API. I'm not sure if that's your question. Do I need to create an API of a custom AI model for fetching results for the front end? If I'm integrating my custom AI model to the backend, yes, you will have to. Yeah, that's exactly what you do. You have a backend which connects to the custom model, and your front end talks to the backend and gets whatever it needs from the backend. Yeah, I would assume your question is, oh, someone created HeyGen. That should be exciting. I would assume your question. That's pretty good. I would assume your question is whether or not the front end should directly talk to the backend, and the answer is no. Wow, that's good. It's quite a copy. And I see everything polished, nothing weird. These don't open, but that is fine. Everything else looks almost perfect to me. Yeah, that's pretty good. That is very, very good. How long did it take for you to make this? You did probably not design this yourself, but yeah, this is very good, very polished. I don't see anything weird in here. Oh well, there I see one weird thing over here on mobile, like very close to what you want. So yeah, pretty cool. Yeah, this is very cool. Where is the code for it? Oh, sorry, I wasn't sharing my screen, was I? This person created like a HeyGen clone, which is pretty good. I mean, it's pretty close to what you might want from an app like this. Where is the code base? What's your GitHub? Can you show me? React, there's like some hooks, common hooks that people keep asking about. So like use memo, we probably should cover them. Use memo, use callback. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Other than that, React में ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. Next.js, am I missing something? No, we did custom hooks. We did. Yeah, I think we did everything. Constant hard work only. Oh, let's see. Oh, it looks pretty good. Font is a little messed up. Everything else is fine. Yeah, your font is a little weird. Everything else looks pretty good. Light mode is working. Dark mode is working. Just the landing page for now. Yeah, it's pretty good. I like it. Yeah, the fonts are a little weird everywhere. It's the only thing that's making it look ugly. Everything else looks pretty good. Oh. Oh. For a technical breakdown, attackers began targeted the multi-sig, which had 6 signatures, 5 from WazirX, 1 from Lemon. This was confirmed by WazirX as well. Instead of the straightforward drain, the hacker opted for a more insidious approach. They set out to upgrade the multi-sig wallet to a malicious version under their control. To achieve this, they needed to overcome WazirX security measures, which included likely compromised 2 of the 4 required private keys. For the remaining 2, they employed signature phishing. The deception of the extended to Laminize interface, where WazirX suspected a discrepancy between the display data and the actual transaction content. The deception extended to the Laminize interface and allowed the payload to be replaced. Minutes before the hack, the intermediate user transfer failed. A red flag went unnoticed. 2 of the 4 signatories were actually upgrading the safe to malicious contract, not for the USDT transfer. Ooh. With all the pieces of the hack executed using the 2 compromised keys and 2 phishing signatures, if you upgraded the multi-sig to the malicious contract. Critically, one of the phishing signatures came from Lamina. This suggests that the significant failure in Lamina's verification process as well. A vulnerability in the attack exploit district. All right, this looks very detailed, and seems like someone also, investigated it completely. We should go through this. I also have a video on it, but we should read through this as well. My video is also sort of based out of this tweet as well. But yeah, it's pretty cool. What is this GitHub repository? God, where did it go? Chat, GitHub. Oh, there you go. Yeah, what is this repository? It's okay, makes sense. It's an aggregation of all attacks done by that Korean group. I don't know how to pronounce their name, Lazarus, something like that. But yeah, cool, man. This is pretty good. We should start Twitch streaming. Like, this is like very sort of interesting. So why don't I just, I don't know, stream my day on Twitch? I think a few other people do it. It's pretty, I don't know. We'll think about it. All right, cool guys. We'll call it here.